You've probably read Influence or watched a summary. You can list the 6 principles: reciprocity, commitment, social proof, liking, authority, scarcity. You feel like you understand the book. Most of you don't. Not because the principles are wrong, because the entire frame most readers approach this book with is backward. Robert Cialdini didn't write a manipulation manual. He wrote a defense manual. Today I'm going to show you what most readers miss and the one principle Cialdini himself thought was the most dangerous. I'm Jake, and this is the Operator's Library, where we go deep on the books that change how operators actually think and build. Today, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. First published in 1984, over 7 million copies sold. Probably the single most cited book in modern marketing, sales, and behavioral science. Last week we talked about Dale Carnegie, and I argued that Carnegie reverse-engineered human behavior decades before the science caught up. This week we're talking about the man who actually did the science. Cialdini's findings validated almost everything Carnegie intuited. The 2 books are not in conflict. They're in conversation across 48 years. We're going deep on 3 of the 6 principles, the ones most powerful, most weaponized, and most defensively useful. Then what Cialdini himself worried about, and one specific thing you do tomorrow. Let's get into it. Here's the misreading. Most readers come to Influence looking for persuasion tools. They extract the 6 principles and walk away thinking, now I have a toolkit. That's not the book Cialdini wrote. In the introduction, which most readers skip, Cialdini explains why he wrote it. He wasn't a marketer. He was a social psychologist who got tired of being a sucker, tired of buying things he didn't need, tired of saying yes to requests he wished he'd said no to. So he spent 3 years undercover and used car dealerships, telemarketing operations, fundraising organizations, cult recruitment groups. The book is the result of that fieldwork. The question that drove him wasn't, how do I influence people? It was, how am I being influenced without realizing it? That distinction changes everything. Once you read the book defensively, the 6 principles stop being techniques to deploy. They become patterns to recognize, patterns that exploit automatic, unconscious decision-making, the kind of decisions you make without realizing you're making them. Daniel Kahneman would later give us the vocabulary, System 1 and System 2. Fast and slow. Cialdini's principles target the fast system, not your reasoning, your reflex. That's why the book matters. Not because it gives you tools, because it gives you recognition. The first principle is reciprocity. When someone does something for us, we feel a deep, almost biological pull to do something back. The shallow reading is, give people things and they'll feel obligated to give back. That's the version every sales trainer in America has been teaching for 30 years. Here's what Cialdini actually documented. Reciprocity doesn't require the gift to be wanted. It doesn't require it to be valuable. It doesn't even require a real relationship. Cialdini's research showed that complete strangers, given an unsolicited gift, felt the obligation to reciprocate so strongly they would make decisions actively against their own interests to discharge it. The Hare Krishnas funded their entire movement on this in the 1970s. They handed flowers to people in airports, flowers most people didn't want, and tried to give back. The Krishnas refused to take them back. 20 seconds later, they asked for a donation. It worked repeatedly across millions in fundraising until airports caught on and banned them. That's not persuasion, that's exploitation of an automatic response. Read defensively. Cialdini's prescription is precise. Redefine the gift. The moment you feel the reciprocity pull, ask one question. Was this a genuine gift or a compliance trigger? A friend buys you lunch. That's a gift. A car salesman offers you a free coffee while you wait. That's a compliance trigger. The mechanics are identical. The intent is opposite. Once you can name the difference, the obligation collapses. The second principle is commitment and consistency. People want to be, or appear to be, consistent with what they've already said or done. This is the most underestimated principle in the book, and the most dangerous. Once you take a small action, sign a petition, agree to a small request, state a position publicly, you create pressure on yourself to behave consistently with that initial commitment. Even when the situation changes, even when the consistent behavior costs you. Cialdini's classic example. Researchers asked homeowners to put a small sign in their front yard supporting safe driving. Most agreed. 2 weeks later, different researchers asked the same homeowners to put up an enormous, ugly billboard. The homeowners who'd agreed to the small sign were 4 times more likely to agree to the billboard. The first commitment changed their self-image. They now saw themselves as people who supported public safety. The billboard wasn't a separate request. It was a consistency demand. Now think about how often this happens to you, the free trial that becomes a paid subscription, the introductory call that becomes a 6-figure deal, the casual yes to a small project that becomes the project that ate your year. Each started with a commitment that seemed too small to refuse. Each created downstream pressure to remain consistent, pressure operating below the level of conscious decision-making. The defensive read is hard to hear. Be skeptical of your own consistency. The fact that you said yes earlier is not by itself a reason to keep saying yes. New information matters more than past commitment. Cialdini's exact recommendation: when you feel the pull to remain consistent, ask, knowing what I know now, would I make the same initial commitment? If the answer is no, the consistency is costing you something it's not worth. This is the hardest principle to defend against. The pressure feels like integrity. It feels like character. Sometimes it's just a trap your earlier self set for your present self. The third principle is social proof. We determine what's correct by looking at what other people think is correct. This is the principle Cialdini himself thought was most dangerous. He said it explicitly. Of all 6 principles, this one scales the worst, fails the worst, and has been weaponized the most aggressively in the digital age. Social proof works because, in environments of uncertainty, looking at what others are doing is a reasonable shortcut. If you walk into an unfamiliar restaurant and it's packed, that's information. Most of the time, the crowd is right. But Cialdini documented the failure mode: pluralistic ignorance. Everyone looking around to see what to do, and because everyone is looking around, no one is doing anything, which signals to everyone else that nothing needs to be done. Bystander effect. People dying on subway platforms while crowds walk past. That was the analog version. The digital version is exponentially worse. In 2026, social proof is fabricated at scale. Every metric you see, follower counts, view counts, like counts, as seen on logos, testimonials, reviews, has been weaponized as a compliance trigger. Cialdini wrote the book before any of this existed. The principle he documented is the engine that powers all of it. The defensive read: when you find yourself moved by a number, a sub-count, a sales figure, a 10,000 happy customers, pause and ask, is this evidence or is this performance? Real evidence is observable. Performance is just a number on a screen. The crowd is sometimes right, but the digital environment has made the crowd's signal nearly impossible to read accurately. Here's the part most readers miss entirely. In the final chapter of Influence and in Persuasion, his 2016 follow-up, Cialdini expressed real concern about how his work was being used. He wrote a defense manual. He watched it get adopted as a marketing playbook. His worry wasn't academic. The more these techniques get deployed in commercial environments, the more the techniques themselves erode. Trust degrades. People become cynical. Real persuasion, the kind that actually moves society forward, gets harder. Carnegie warned about this in 1936. The techniques without the ethic become manipulation. Cialdini documented the same thing in 1984 with the rigor of a scientist. 2 different generations, same warning, largely ignored. The book is not a license, it's a microscope. Cialdini wanted you to see clearly. Most readers picked up the microscope and used it as a hammer. If this video was useful, here's what I want you to do now. Pick one decision you've made in the last 30 days that you're not sure was actually yours. A purchase, a commitment, a yes that surprised you. Walk it back through the 6 principles. Ask, was reciprocity in play? Did I commit to something small first? Did I look at what others were doing? Was I responding to authority cues or to actual expertise? You won't always find an answer. Sometimes the decision was just yours, but sometimes, and you'll know it when you see it, you'll find one of these principles operating beneath the level of your awareness. The moment you can name it, you reclaim something. The decision becomes yours, retroactively. That's the actual gift of this book. not the ability to influence others, the ability to take back the decisions that weren't fully yours to begin with. Carnegie taught us how to build influence through genuine attention. Cialdini taught us how to recognize when influence is being weaponized against us. Two books, written 48 years apart, that together form the most complete map of human persuasion in the modern canon. If this breakdown was useful, subscribe. I'll be doing a new deep dive every Tuesday on the books that change how operators think and build. I want to know, which of the 6 principles do you think is operating on you most right now? Drop it in the comments. I read every one of them. Next week, we're going into Hormozi's $100 million offers, and after spending 2 weeks on Carnegie and Cialdini, you're going to read Hormozi very differently than you did the first time. See you then.